I think it's unforgivable for this team, these coaches, this federation, to what the fan base is going through right now. I mean, they are doing everything in their possible way to turn both fans and anybody who casually may have interest on and off the field just completely off. I mean, you see what's going on with the federation, what's been the last, I would say, almost 2 years. And it's completely shunned people the wrong way. You see what's going on the field. There's a lack of desire, commitment, almost at times willingness, and that's unacceptable. Many have said, and I was one of them, that when Greg Berhalter was going to come into the fold, the one thing this team would have was a purpose, an identity. You knew what your job would be. We didn't see that last night. We have not seen that with Greg Berhalter. I still believe Greg Berhalter is a good coach, but if you're a good coach and you don't adapt, you don't change, you're not a good coach anymore. And he's proving that he's not going to adapt. He's not going to change. So I have my doubts about Greg Berhalter and where he could take this team. Also, we got to be honest. The talent level today isn't where it was yesterday. And what I mean, maybe across the board, you've got better players. But if you look at the top-end talent, there's no more Landon Donovans. There's no more Clint Dempsey's, Tim Howard's, Carlos Bocanegras. This back line, this defensive mindset is as disjointed, as lackluster as I've ever seen in a program. The last time I saw a U.S. men's national team play the way they did against Canada was that fateful night in Trinidad. That's how bad it was. When Greg Berhalter talks about how disappointing it was to see the lack of effort, the lack of desire, that's on him. That's squarely on him. And these players have to look at themselves, because what happened last night, when he says these games are never easy, well, they have been for the last 34 years. Where was that? Canada did their job. That's fine. But we're not going to talk about Canada. You need to talk about what you didn't do. You need to talk about how this isn't good for you and your program, and how if you don't change something, if you keep trying to put these square holes into these circles into these square pegs, it's not going to work anymore. You don't have the personnel to play that you want to do these wing progressions. You don't have that type of talent. You need to go back to the basics. The one thing the U.S. men's national team has always had is an identity, discipline, fight, effort, tactical awareness. On any given night, I think pundits alike and fans thought they at least had a fighting chance, a puncher's chance. We don't see that anymore with this U.S. men's national team.
We just got to look at the player ratings. I think it was Jordan Morris with a 4 was the highest of the field position players. Ale, is last night's performance more on the players themselves or the manager?
When you have a result like this, and really when you have the last couple of years that you've had with the U.S. national team, it isn't one thing, and it isn't one decision. So it hits the fan, and it sprinkles everybody. Mm-hmm. So everybody takes a hit on this. Greg Berhalter takes a hit. The players take a hit. There's nothing more damning, in my view, in my opinion, that you can say about a player, certainly at the international level, that he did not compete, that you're representing your country and you did not compete, that you were not up for the fight, that Canada challenged you and you took a step back rather than take a step forward. It tells me a lot about these players, and it tells me a lot about the program. And it tells me a lot about the fact that this team right now, they don't know who they are. They're in between. They're neither here nor there. They think they can play a certain style with a certain tactical approach, with a certain awareness, and we're going to knock the ball around and we're going to pass the ball around. But you don't have the players to do that because you don't have the talent level to approach the game in that manner. But you don't want to go back to being the team that was practical, that was efficient, that was effective, that would win the game 1-0 with a set piece and move on with your life, because we're too good for that. We've moved on from that. Are you too good? You didn't make the last World Cup. You didn't. That's fact. So are you too good for that? You're not too good to go back to saying, you know what, maybe we just don't have what we think we had, and maybe we become practical, we become efficient, and then we take a step forward from there. Once you prove you can do that again, and you can match the fight, and you can match the intensity, then you can move on to fancier things. Until then, go back to square one.
Greg, simple as that? Bad batch of players?
Yeah. I mean,
all I ever hear you say is bang average, bang average, bang average. Is that what we're looking at?
Bang average and workmanlike for many a year. And we talk about lots of national teams, good and bad, including my own national team, who are hopeless. But I've never covered a national team with as much bull spoken as the US. I really haven't. This is a team who the average soccer fan or a nation, this soccer nation, has been led to believe by people who analyse the game here that they're better than what they are. And then when results turn badly, they're gobsmacked by the performances because they've been led to believe that they're in a better position than they clearly are. This, the things we know, darkness follows daylight, the earth is round, and the US are not a very good team. They're a blimp and have been for a long time on the horizon of the global game. But every weekend, we have to sit and listen to people talking about Pulisic as if he's the second coming of Messi. And this guy playing in the Bundesliga, and this guy. And it's like the world's going to crash if these guys are not playing at the football club because they're the greatest things in sliced bread. Well, you know what? And I don't have anything against Pulisic or any American soccer player or any player, but it has hit home hard to a lot of people just where they are in the standing of the game at the moment. There should be a realisation amongst American soccer fans about their place in the game right now. That's where they are at the moment. It is no shock that they have lost to Canada away. No shock whatsoever.
2 years ago, you said this was the worst American team you'd ever seen and the most arrogant. You still feel that arrogance exists?
I do. And I tell you why. And I think this is a team that believes their own hype, that believes what's said about them. And I think that kind of starts from an insecurity about US soccer in general from commentators here in the US. Whenever the US has a good result, it's billed as this is proof that we can hold our own against the big boys in world soccer. Whenever they don't, it's completely the opposite. And oftentimes, for instance, the drubbing against Mexico, the loss to Venezuela, it's about, well, we're building our program and the issues are kind of shunted under the carpet. And then all of a sudden, you have the Cuba result, you win 7-0, and it's all about we are far too good for CONCACAF. And this team believes their own hype. I don't doubt for a moment that had these games been reversed, had the US played Canada first and then Cuba second, maybe we have a different result. Maybe we're talking about a different result in Canada-US. But because you go and beat Cuba, and all of a sudden, and again, stemming from the insecurity of analysts and commentators around US soccer, this is the best thing since sliced. We are on our way back. We're going to be on a par with the European nations before long, and this team believes it. And that's what they get as a result.
During the last round of qualifiers, and Herc, correct me if I'm wrong, you said it was the most talented generation of American soccer players. Is this then the worst generation of American players?
Across the board, you have more talent in better leagues. You've got players like Weston McKennie, Christian Pulisic doing things that no other players have done at such a young age. But like I said, if you look at the top end, Christian Pulisic is the only one that's played meaningful games in both club and country. Weston McKennie scored a hat-trick against Cuba, and we're saying he's the second coming of who knows, of Xavi out there. And I agree with these guys. The U.S. isn't as good as we paint him out to be right now. And yes, they lost to Canada. And yes, the Nations League is a joke, but I still feel this doesn't make them better. Greg Berhalter right now isn't doing the right things. When you say you want to prepare for the future and you tout out a 32-year-old Tim Ream, a guy who can't play out of the back, a guy who's proven with different coaches that he's not maybe a player for this caliber.
Did you see that Canadian 11? Did you see that Canadian 11 where those guys play? How did this group, if they're that talented, lose to that Canadian team? Come on, you got guys on that team that aren't even signed. You're picking one player.
Relax.
Alfonso
You're
Davies
talking about the talent, and I'm telling you they don't have the talent. Now you're bringing in Canada. They don't have the talent. They should never lose. I'm going to tell you something real quick. The last time I played in Canada, we had a guy who got himself injured right before the kickoff. A guy from upstairs who was already a beer in and half a dozen chicken wings came out and played the Canadian players off the pitch, off the park. That's where the program was then and where it is now. There's no talent level right now, but if you don't have that type of talent, then you've got to structure it better. Like you said, back to the basics. There has to be a team that's disciplined, a team that has tactical reasoning, self-awareness to understand that maybe we can't play out the back because we're not good enough. But what are we good at? Very spirited team, very disciplined team, players that can make a difference maybe on the counter, go back to that. And I don't care if Christian Pulisic has flu-like symptoms or not. You don't take your best player. I don't care how garbage he is. If you really want to work to the future, if that's what you're really trying to get at, you make him suck it up. You make him get better because he hasn't gotten better mentally at Chelsea, because he's not going to get better taking him out in the 60th minute. What you're doing is killing a player. What you're doing is killing your team. I don't want to hear about wing progressions from Berhalter. I want to see this team get better, but the right way. That's why, and I agree with you guys. A lot of pundits, a lot of analysts are very insecure in how about the way they go about things with the U.S. men's national team. But this isn't a time for that anymore. This team right now has to get better because the program isn't where it was in the early 2000s, where it's gaining fans. It's losing fans.
Can I tell you something that perhaps even just as important is the fact that I don't think overall, given the 2 years that we have had with this version of the U.S. men's national team, I don't think it matters. I don't know. I think
they lost.
I think there's a certain apathy to this team anyways. Every weekend, I have to take my son to games here and there and everywhere. 14-year-old, 15-year-old kids who are involved in the system that should be the feeder to the national team. These kids don't talk about the U.S. national team. They talk about everything else in soccer, but not the U.S. national team. It's not when these kids have grown up thinking, we didn't make the World Cup. We're losing to Venezuela at home. We're getting destroyed by teams. We're getting destroyed by Mexico. We don't win with any sort of consistency. We stink. We stink. That's what the results tell you. That's the reality. We're not very good, and so it becomes sort of a second thought, an afterthought. It becomes a secondary thing for people to, well, we lost. All right, we move on with our lives. We've come to expect that. That apathy continues to grow. There is a disconnect between fans, casual fans, and this program. And that disconnect seems to get wider and wider. And it won't change anytime soon until there seems to be a structure and there seems to be a direction in which this program is decidedly going into.
People struggle with the concept here, and I probably get to go back to the UK tweets that you normally get after you say something, but I'm not particularly bothered. People struggle with the concept that you can have such a large populated country and yet seem to struggle so much. And it's just facts that, you know, there are other countries out there with similar problems, and there are smaller countries like Croatia with, you know, a 4 or 5 million population that can get to a World Cup final. It is what it is. If you can accept, and I know it's difficult to accept, if you can accept you are, to coin a phrase, bang average at best, then results will maybe taste a little bit sweeter. But when expectations just are way above the station, then and saying that, you know, I understand the expectations are to beat Canada, but we're not talking about this as an isolated one-game incident.
No, there's plenty of other.
We're talking about it over a period.
Mexico 3-0 that could have been 5-0. Mexico 1-0 in the Gold Cup final that could have been 3-0.
But I think there's no point.
Curacao, basically, you know, skating by.
The Gold Cup, get the Gold Cup. Put it, you know, dig a hole, put the Gold Cup in, and
yeah, but we still are evaluating those performances. It's been bad since then.
Well, I'm not evaluating. I've said all along, you can't evaluate performances in a competition with 2 big teams and 14 holiday destinations. It's just not possible. So what, you know, at the end of the day, you've just got to accept that your talent pool isn't the best, your coach isn't the best, and hence your results are not the best. It's not difficult to understand. It's really not a difficult concept, and it's not, you know, it's not been confrontational or trying to be, you know, out there by saying the American team and player pool are just not very good, and they're not alone.
Greg, I can accept that. I think many can accept that. It's the view out there that the players, the programs, the federation, they don't care. Keep sending us your money. We don't care. You pundits, keep talking. What we're going to do is we're going to call your bosses. We're going to send an email. We're going to make a phone call. We don't care. That's what's getting fans. That's what's getting pundits. That's what's getting everybody in an uproar. It's not that they're not very good, at their bang average. That's fine. But even at bang average, the last 2 decades, I always felt the U.S. men's national team on their day had a chance to make things at least interesting. I don't feel that today. I don't see that today with the players in the attitude. I don't see that today with the coaching staff in the demeanor, and especially not with the federation. At some point, these hard-working fans that they keep raising the ticket prices on have to say enough is enough.
Herc, Berhalter has suggested that there is progress being made. Do you agree with him?
By U.S.?
Yes.
In which direction? Come on, what's he supposed to say? And by the way, I'm not necessarily blaming the 16-year-old with the car right here. I want to blame who gave him the keys. I think it's a much more, a bigger problem than just the Trinidad game and this Canada game. It's been the overall, I mean, if he's trying to think or if he's trying to get an identity, that was last year. That was the 13 months while they were looking for a head coach instead of having Dave Sarachan as the interim coach. That time has gone. I mean, they didn't interview guys who were legitimate candidates around the world. One of them, Tata Martino, Julian Lopetegui, because they didn't speak Spanish. I mean, are we serious? This is where the program is today, and that's the most worrisome thing for me. I can say 11v11, Canada were better on the night. If it's an isolated one-off, those things happen in football. That is fine. But this isn't an isolated incident. This is a tendency. We've seen it over and over again in the last few years.
Herc, you've said no progress and unforgivable. How far are we from you thinking that Greg Berhalter should no longer be the manager?
It's getting awfully close. And I'll tell you, I got to put this beautiful mug on Spanish television, every day and defend what is the U.S. men's national team. I can't defend him anymore. I can't defend the federation. I can't defend these players because it's gotten to that point. At some point, it's Ernie Stewart, it's Greg Berhalter, and the dominoes should keep rolling on down until it's a clean slate.
Tell you what, though, you need a magic wand with this lot at the moment, wouldn't you? I mean, don't get me wrong.
We can say the players are bad. We can say the federation is messed up, but we can point at the manager as well.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
I mean, you've had 10 months, and nobody here can say. Has anybody seen progress?
No.
Let me ask this though. What's the line in the sand for Berhalter in terms of letting him go? Because the U.S. men's national team are going to qualify for the Hex. So unless you do as you did for
Here's
the
the danger,
2018
Shaka.
World Cup.
They're going to do what they did last time. They're going to get in with Berhalter, lose the first two games, have to make a dramatic switch in qualification.
That's my point. Nothing matters for this U.S. men's national team, especially now, given the way that CONCACAF World Cup qualifying has been restructured to favour the bigger nations within CONCACAF. So as a result, you could just limp along, you could criticize the Nations League all you want, whether you win, lose, draw, get battered, because you're going to qualify for the Hex, and until the wheels fall off in the Hex, then all of a sudden, it'll be panic stations, what do we now do? Because until then, we're just talking into the wind.
Any reason to believe we're not headed for a repeat?
This is a worse group of players than the one that did not make it to the last World Cup.
With worse results, too.
Yeah.
I mean, in the few results that you can compare, two Mexico matches, worse results.
Look at the run of games and tell me where there was a dominant performance outside of Cuba.
And that's an asterisk. I mean,
yeah. And so outside of Cuba, where was there a game that you said, ooh, I see something. We see what we're working with. No. And you just, and the other thing that is also troubling, some people will say, well, there's some injuries. Okay, so who's walking through that door? Is Lionel Messi coming? Is Cristiano Ronaldo coming? No, those guys are not coming. What you have coming is Josie Altidore, Tyler Adams, John Brooks, and that's about it. Are you telling me that these three players will make up the gap and will make up the difference into being what we consider to be a poor performance and an outstanding performance? No, the gap is much bigger than that.
Do you know what made me laugh as well? And I have to tell you, I am utterly bored about talking about this men's national team. However, we are obligated, and I have to listen to the nonsense with the player pool over the last few years about how we want to get this. What we need to get here is a style, and we want to be passing it here, and we want to be
proactive.
We want to be doing all this stuff, and I'm thinking, I'm listening, I'm going, I've heard a lot of nonsense over the years, but I'm hearing it by the bucket loads now. Because at the end of
who
the
are you
day,
hearing it from? Just to be clear, is it from the manager when you hear the conversations, the tactics?
Everybody that follows this team, almost to a man. And you have what you have, and this thought process about we're only going to skin a cat one way is just utter craziness from people that have all played international level. You've got to do what you have to do.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be pretty. Right? If they'd gone and beat Canada last night and not played particularly well, we probably wouldn't be having this discussion. If they'd gone to Trinidad and Tobago and just done a job, things would have been smoothed over a little bit. But you've got to do what you've got to do, right? There's no point trying to paint a picture of we're going to pass it out the back like Barcelona and Manchester City when you haven't got the players to do it. So when you're filling people's heads, and I go back to this point, when you're filling people's heads that maybe don't, and I'm talking about supporters, that maybe don't quite understand the sport like we do, or maybe are new to the sport, then they're wondering, well, why are we not doing this? Why are we not doing what we're told we're going to be playing from the back? You can't do that. Because you can fool some of the people some of the time, but not all of the people all of the time.
A historic defeat for the U.S. There is some good news, though.
What's that?
They're still in second place
Hey!
in League A, Group A of
Thank
the
goodness for
CONCACAF
Cuba.
Nations League.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPNFC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN+.